Hey, good evening, Galleon. This is Mayor Tom O'Leary. What's left of him from from today, a long day. Uh, Busy with the Galleon graders, getting that pulled together, and on Friday is our opening night. So without being, Miranda Jones, the head of the Galleon Crestline Chamber, she has this expression, shameless plug. So I'll blame that shameless plug on her. But we're opening up on Friday. Today was the day they came to town, and I can testify to the fact that you've got the kind of post-COVID blues. We're trying to organize some activities and actually improv pretty well. I want to thank the hospital for once again Avita for working with the graders, providing training services. This knucklehead kind of forgot that they are shut down and that you can't just have meetings that you ordinarily did. So they're very accommodating. I want to thank them publicly in this extended shameless plug. Beyond that, I think what I would like to do to start off tonight with is explain a little bit how the mayor, how Tom O'Leary operates on Facebook, and I think we use it almost every Monday night. Tonight it's Tuesday. Use it as a way to get information out in the community. And so kind of once again on Friday, there's as they say in the internet, I guess, they dropped some information on Talk About Galleon, which again, like some of the best things that you can see about Galleon, and some of the, gosh, that's maybe not so flattering, once again was at work. And so there was a long thread that happened on Friday. I want to comment without resurrecting that. I know that's the risk that you take when you bring something that's 2 or 3 days old back up. But there was one comment, I don't want to be too thin-skinned, but there was a comment that I wanted to just take a second and respond to and see if that generates any more conversation. And one of the comments, kind of about halfway through this discussion about how to define success and whether somehow the east side and the west side are pitted against one another, it's kind of like 5 minutes from one side of town to the other. So it's, in my view, this day and age, kind of ridiculous to allow our small town to divide itself into different sectors or different sides of town, as if anyone in this job would look at things that benefit the west side or benefit the east side. So I don't want to jump back into that discussion, but I do want to comment on a comment that was made that I, as mayor, only seem to care about the parks, and so maybe it's a thin-skinnedness, but I wanted to respond to that. One of the reasons that we've been able to do a lot with our parks, and why, if you follow what's going on in city government, it seems like, gee, there's a playground here and a splash park there, and improvements at the high school football stadium and baseball stadium, and bathrooms where there weren't bathrooms before. One of the reasons that you hear a lot about that is because that's something the city directly controls. And so, without getting too self-conscious about what goes on in city government, I think that's one of the basic things that people expect out of the community. And in fact, as we move from a pretty good park system in Galleon to approaching an excellent system, one of the things that you're going to see is more and more discussion about it. So no apologies for that. I think it's also a function, I said a second ago, that it's something we control. I think most everyone who follows, at least, follows along in what's going on in city governments, has heard about the Freeze Foundation and the Freeze projects, and most recently the Freeze Center. And so, that's another reason that parks in the city of Galleon are going to be a big topic, and it should be a big topic. We're blessed with a particularly large endowment. When you look at it, it's about 10,000 people in Galion, a little less, and we have $13 million in that endowment. So if you just were to just look at it from the point of view of dollars per citizen that is in that endowment, it's pretty significant. I think that's why people on a particular project or another end up around the table with a range of points of view. It's not just one side or the other. There are certainly a number of points of view on something like the Freeze Foundation. Heck, I can remember 3 or 4 years ago, and I'll pipe down here in a second, it was all about handicap bathrooms. No handicap bathrooms. Couldn't have that. And so I think folks up here at City Hall listened to that, and we've constructed a series of those in most every park. I know Matt was working today on getting the paperwork done for what would be another grant that would come through ODNR, NatureWorks, for those who care about the names of those things. And we're going to apply for a bathroom so that when we launch a dog park, which I think there's a fairly strong consensus for. I don't know if the cats are happy about it, but I think dogs and dog owners are like the idea of it, that we'll have a bathroom down there and that we'll have the right kind of facilities. So that this NatureWorks grant will continue the improvement in the park. So yeah, I guess I'll plead guilty for talking a lot about the parks. That's because we've done a lot and we have the resources to continue to do a lot. But I'd be really not doing all the people who've worked at City Hall, all the people who've paid the license plate taxes, and I'd make the case that in addition to parks, we made some pretty significant improvements in the streets in the community. The resurfacing of Harding Way being one of the most, maybe that's in the forefront of a lot of people's mind. And then, later this fall, a major project. I don't know anyone who's listening or anyone who knows anyone in the Galion area that hasn't almost rear-ended somebody or been frustrated in that Portland Way North Corridor. And so I think while it will be a heck of a project to build, a devil of a time, some people might say, frustrating for people who are trying to get to and from work or to and from parts of the community while we're building it. When it's done, I think I would have very little trouble making the case that the city administration has done a lot in terms of improving highways, state highways, and at the same time not neglecting the city streets. I think our this year's paving project, scaling in at about $350,000, is certainly most of the worst streets in town, and sometime in the future maybe we'll start working off the middle of the list because the worst streets have all been paved. But when it comes to all you care about is parks, I want to quickly say I also care about streets. And oh, by the way, if if folks wanted to listen to me go on, I would talk with a list of results and accomplishments in the water and sewer utility, and a lot that we've done in the electric utility. So I don't know quite what this particular person said. All I care about parks. I don't know if that's quite true. I bet we have some questions. I want to open up one other item that you'll probably hear a lot from me. This is one of those, if you're at all superstitious, knock on wood with me. And that's how relatively successful the city's been at managing the labor unions and the relationship between the mayor's office and our supervisors, the mayor's office, and the 4 union contracts we have. So, when it comes to what we're doing and what we're not doing up here, if you were to talk to not every city employee, but if you were to talk to people who have been involved in city government over the years, I think they would, and you looked at the numbers, we've had and this isn't just the management. Hell no, that isn't how it works. This is an improved and a pretty cooperative working relationship with most of the employees. So we're grievance free for the most part. We've negotiated fair contracts that the taxpayers, I think, can afford. And so, sometimes when the person that you're dealing with at the city doesn't chew you out and talk to you with a bad attitude, sometimes you forget the bad old days. So I think that's something that all the people who work with the city take some pride in, and that's what I consider, and I could get challenged on this, but an improved labor management climate, and I think that translates into a better, more engaged, more enthusiastic, if you'll accept that term, workforce. So anyways, I forget the name of the person that raised that in that long thread that went on for a few hours over last weekend, but I did want to mention that it's not just the parks, it's the streets, it's the utilities, it's the police and fire. It's just it's unfair, and I got to cry foul or something. There has been success or progress made in all those different areas. But the parks are pretty cool now too. All right, I'll stop.
Yes,
What do you got? All right.
No questions just yet. Did you want to take a minute to touch base on Splash Park and pool?
Yeah, I wish it would warm up a little bit, but we were ready to go over the weekend. Was even on Monday, which was a beautiful day. It wasn't really warm enough, so we're the Y is staffed up and ready to go at both locations. Help me, I'm not even sure if we're late on the pool.
The pool is on track to open this Saturday, and then the Splash Park, they did go ahead and open today just to,
Yep.
see who came out.
Oh man, there's like 10 people and we lost all kinds of money. What a bad decision to have something free for the public to use. So, all right, we'll bundle up. Scuba divers, put on your scuba gear and go out to the Splash Park. But I think, that's another example of sort of incremental improvement in terms of getting that up and running. It's also a good example since, if there's, I think there were 60 people watching the committee meeting that happened at 7 o'clock, so I'll be real disappointed if everybody turned off and we can't engage in some dialogue. But I think the YMCA has proven themselves over the many years as being a real strong partner with the city. And I think as wherever you may be on the issue of the Free Center, I think it's funny, some people have staked out their opinion for or against, when there's really, I think it's fair to say, there's a lot to still be worked out and understood before anyone's investing millions of dollars in a project. But one of the key things that has maybe lost momentum in the discussion that I intend to bring forward is the role that the YMCA can play in the operation and management of that imagined and envisioned facility. What we've found at the city, at least in the last 8.5 years, is they're a pretty solid partner. Particularly in this labor market, I'm glad they're the ones trying to find the part-time workers and make sure all of that staffing happens down there, because I think everyone knows it's difficult to find workers these days. But literally they manage that for the city, and how that they I think people who use it know this, but they sell the memberships, they generate the cash, and then they submit to us their operating costs that the city looks at, council, mayor looks at, and then we basically pay the difference between their operating costs and the revenue that they've generated. I want to add one more thing, and if there's not a lot of questions, then maybe that's a good thing. But one more thing about that is that subsidy, if you will, if you want to look at it in a more negative way, that the city pays the Y, allows us to keep the rates at the pool, down and lower than most neighboring communities. I think that's something that, gosh, it seems like it's 5 or 6 years ago, but there was the last time we talked about, debated whether or not to raise pool rates, and I think that was embroiled in the discussion about whether it was a family rate or some other group of folks that cohabitate, and that I can remember that got spun up by some people, and then they moved to Lexington. So, see how folks are, and they can't make them happy. But anyway, main point is that the Y runs the pool, does the hiring, does the management, and then we at the city pay the difference between those operating costs and what they can generate through memberships and daily admissions. So that's the question that nobody asked, but they should have asked. Got anything there?
Tina just had a reminder for the city. All the trees around the square area still need a haircut. Some are even coming up out of the ground.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. It allows me to, sometimes she asks some mean questions, but Tina had a good suggestion here tonight, so I'd love her. Anyway, the part of the Park Square project is really one of the major cost items in that project that's funded through the state capital bill. That's something that the city didn't do much of under the city management, but we've been doing a lot of during the mayor, and that's going after capital bill financing. But anyways, another shameless commercial. That grant that we're going to be putting into play and bringing it to the uptown area includes or involves the replacement of some of those trees that have, as you say, heaved up the sidewalk and heaved up the area. It's really the kind of slip fall hazard that once you're aware of, you need to take care of, and that's part of the project. So yeah, the haircut part, yeah, I agree with you, and part of the solution is trimming them for now, but a good look at the kinds of trees we have up there, and maybe a systematic way of replacing some of the, I don't want to say noxious, because I think people's preferences or their aesthetic as far as trees go kind of changes over time. But boy, those are some dirty trees up there, folks, and we're going to try to, without being a punster, weed them out, particularly starting with the square, the Park Square up there. So hope that answers your question. She's right, and a lot will happen this year, and then we'll have to, make decisions about the other 3 quadrants in the square as time goes on. What else we got?
That is all I have for right now.
All right. Well, we'll, as folks that watch this either tonight or over the rest of the week, know I can go on for a few minutes. So I would want to encourage people who don't get out in that Portland Way corridor to, if you're the passenger, not the driver, or you get stopped at that traffic light that didn't used to be there. Remember that one? So anyways, if you get stopped there, you'll see it seemed like it was never going to happen, but tremendous progress on the demolition of the old Pico 2 headquarters and manufacturing facilities. And what that signals to people in the city is that the next step will be the construction of a spec building, meaning speculative building, and that should happen. Yeah, I hate setting dates because you always goof up. I suspect if it starts this year to be awesome, it may be early next year before that spec building goes up. I mean, I think everyone knows this, all material costs have gone up. And in addition to the material costs going up, the delay, the lead time, if you will, on steel that they'll need to build a building such as is envisioned by the developer out there, JBS. So that's it's great to see that. I know for years as you pulled into town, a lot of folks, what are they going to do with that? And so that infamous they finally got around to getting their self together. So no, I say that jokingly, that this is is a big step forward in the redevelopment of that site. And you know, we've been talking. I'll go on for another second or two here. A little bit of the discussion over the weekend was why nothing happens on the east side of town, and why there's, you know, development along Portland Way corridor and not the development at 61 and 30. And some of the people contributed. Longtime friend Harry Titus, you know, you talk about, wow, I wish I'd have said that. Well, he commented on a lot of those economic factors that influence our city and our area. But the differences between 598 and 61 and 30, those two interchanges, and why is there so much attention, I don't want to say initially because we've been working at it for a few years, but why 598 seems to be in the forefront, and that really has a lot to do with the existing utilities. And going back to the pre-church directory era when it was ITT North and the North Electric out there, that development, those many jobs were enabled by having city utilities out there. Now, it wasn't always annexed, but there were utilities out there. In any case, so 598 runs ahead of 61 because the utilities are in place, and the redevelopment involves quite a few factors, but not as many. Over at 61, what we've been working on the past, be honest with you, we worked on it feverishly before COVID hit, and then COVID hit and turned everything on its head, and it slowed the development out there in terms of talking to property owners, in terms of identifying utility costs, in terms of knowing how we were going to pay for certain improvements. So it honestly went dormant for several months, and for a number of factors that we hope come together in terms of a development project. A number of factors kind of started moving, created some momentum, and so now from the point of view of the mayor's office, there's a lot more emphasis on figuring out how to provide sewer to that area, and then getting those factors, the access to the site improved. The water is clearly in place and ready to roll, and that was observed over the weekend in the recent discussion that well, there's 12-inch water line out there, and that hasn't spurred any development. Well, that's because there's just a water line. And going back a long time before I ever thought about being mayor, even before any people thought about having a mayor again, there were promises made to get sewer out there along 61, never been fulfilled. And so I think if we want to, as a community, to see that as a future development area, something I'm very enthused about and think it's possible. I think it's one of the better sites. In fact, I'm going to digress for a second, then I'll wind down and say goodnight. But we had one of the major property owners out there in the office today, and Matt was going through a list of components that Jobs Ohio looks for in having a developable site. You know, you can have wonderful ground, you can have great adjacent highway access, you can have most of the utilities, but you probably still don't have a competitive site. So what we've been doing here in the office is working to fill out a template that's used to sort contenders from pretenders. In that discussion with the property owner, he pointed out, of course that's his job to point out the merits of his property, that this is one of the larger sites in the state that is an opportunity zone and has the kind of developable potential. So, you know, until it starts to click, all of that sounds great, but, you know, show me the results. And I think that's what we're working on, is trying to get all the utilities, get all the necessary environmental phase 1, phase 2 for people who have heard that or like to throw the term around. Get that site qualified, basically, so that as projects come into the state, we really have in this area something that not every industrial park in Ohio has, certainly not every industrial park in Northwest Ohio has. So we're going to try to get that site into shape, and I'm pretty confident that once it's fully developed from a utility point of view, the roadway access is more completely developed. That we could see some development. That I think that's what people are looking for in town. It's not that we need more manufacturing necessary or we need more warehousing necessarily, but we need a combination of new investment, and I think we have that site out there. So anyway, long story long, that's something that we've been working on in addition to parks over the past several months, and then, and it's something that this post-COVID world, I think those folks who get on the move quickly and don't sit neutral and wonder what to do, I think they'll benefit from the reemergence and the kind of reopening, and we'll see how that goes. So anyway, that's probably all we got for tonight. We have questions?
I did have a question come
Please.
in from Dee.
Yeah.
She said the cleanup along the south bank of the Olentangy on Gill Avenue is impressive. Was that the city's doing, a garden club, or the homeowner?
Oh gosh, on Gill Avenue, north of the bridge, upstream from the bridge, that was a homeowner, and we're trying to make sure that what you see as beautiful isn't seen by some environmental agencies as detrimental. But as far as like cleaning out behind the park, I think the two neighbors on either side of Gill Avenue, right by the bridge, they've really improved those properties, and they look nice. And while I agree with you about the improvements in the Olentangy, we're trying to work to make sure as many of those improvements can stay. There's a lot, no, we don't get into it. There's a lot of folks who like to raise heck with the regulatory agencies. So every town has them, but we know who ours are. And Mr. Anonymous had raised some of those issues. What you call beauty may not be. So we're working through that with them. Gosh, that's either a C- or a D of an answer. I should have just said, I don't have any idea. But no, that's what's going on. I like that. I'd like to clean up the banks, and when a private property owner does that, make such an improvement, it'd be a shame if all that stuff was ruined. So that's all I got. Good. Anybody else?
No other questions?
All right, set your calendars. I'm not being too sarcastic or trying to clown around. On June 10th, so in a week from Thursday,
Yes.
we're going to attempt to have one of the most delayed ribbon cuttings in the history of City of Galion. So finally, after thousands of people have enjoyed the bike path, walking path, we're going to have an official ribbon cutting. We're going to name the trail. I've talked with a number of people about it. It's a little bit unilateral, but I think I've checked it out. I think it's within my power. It's not a street, so we're going to name that and honor the people who preserved that property over the years. And so we hope to have a big turnout. There are walking clubs, I hear on the local radio. So the walking clubs better get there and enjoy that. And then last thing I say, I'm not sure how in the heck we're going to do it, but we are going to do it, and that's have a groundbreaking on what I'll call the Biddle Road extension of that. So we're, again, real excited about that. Wouldn't happen without Freeze Foundation funds. So it's pretty remarkable, those people who have had a chance to be out on the Levant-Dawson Trail to, it's just dozens of people all the time. And so that's the kind of thing that causes one person that said, all I care about is parks. That's probably why, because I get all excited about it. But anyways, June 10th, 10 o'clock.
Correct.
Sounds like a good time. I know it's like really stinky for the working people, and it doesn't accommodate those people who use it in the afternoon, but just take a break from your job if you can, or if you're retired, get out there, and we'll have a nice recognition of that, recognition of how we got here and the vision for the future. So, all right. Anything else?
That was all.
All right. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be back next week. Not much in terms of committee action this week, so I think early next week we'll begin some committees, and we can talk about that on Monday. So, happy Tuesday. Enjoy your short week, and stay in touch. Good night.